Mayor, we're ready when you are.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I will call the regular meeting of the Cathedral City City Council to order. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, and we will start with a Pledge of Allegiance from Mayor Pro Tem Ernesto Gutierrez, and please remain standing for an invocation by Councilmember Nancy Ross.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, this is kind of embarrassing. I've had it just a few minutes ago. Give me just a second. I have put it someplace very special, I'm sure. Or maybe not. Or maybe not. Well, I don't really think I need it in print. I'm going to tell you that I think how lucky we all are for living in such a wonderful place. And we look at the news and we see things that are happening other places, and we know that we're excluded from that, at least how it's going to initially affect our lives today and tomorrow, and how fortunate we are to be in such a wonderful nation around so many great people who are here today, and those watching us, and knowing that we're here for you, and we know you're here for us. Thank you very much. Thank you. That wasn't it at all, but it'll do, huh?
Thank you so much for those inspiring words. All right, we will proceed on. Our next item is the roll call.
Councilmember Gordon,
Here.
Councilmember Ross,
I'm here.
Councilmember Lamb,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez,
Here.
Mayor Gregory.
Here. All right, the next item on our agenda is agenda finalization. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to ask to pull item 3D off the consent calendar for discussion.
All right, and I would also like to pull item 3G, dealing with Senate Bill 872, off of consent when the time is appropriate, so we can have a little discussion. Anyone else? All right, then we'll move on. This is the point in our agenda for public comments on non-agenda items. If you have a public comment on non-agenda items, this would be your time to speak. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and I want to remind everyone we don't have audible outbursts during public comments, so everyone feels welcome. Do we have any speaker cards?
Mayor did not receive any request to speak forms.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we will move on to council reports, and we will start with Councilmember Gordon.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I finally got to attend yoga in the amphitheater twice, yesterday and the week prior, which was really nice. A great way to sort of start the week, and consistently busy, and even despite the heat, there were a lot of people there, which was really great. Last Tuesday, I also met with Katie Slimko from the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce with Eric Besseril, Victor Gomez, and Andy Firestein, and we heard some really great things that chamber is doing. Had some opportunity for the collaboration between the Rancho Mirage Chamber and our city. I think there's some really exciting collaboration opportunities for business development and engagement with our local businesses. So that was a fantastic and exciting meeting. After that, I came up to meet with the Historic Preservation Committee, and I got to meet that group. And relatedly, I conducted interviews for the vacancy on the Historic Preservation Committee, 3 really exciting candidates that put their names forward, and I was really excited to talk to them. A very deep bench of people who are interested in our city, in its history, in preserving our history, telling the story of Cathedral City. So that was really exciting. I also met with Ryan Hunt to talk about some communications opportunities, as well as the plans for the forthcoming Cannabis Town Hall, which I'm looking forward to. Then last week I went to the ribbon cutting for plant growth. There was a number of city staff there, and just a really cool business where you can go, you can pick out your plant, you can pick out your pot, you can paint your pot, then you replant your plant, and just a neat, fun way to get out of the heat in the summertime, and so just a cool business to check out. Then on Sunday, I went to the Color the Spectrum Art Festival, which was the autism art festival in our amphitheater. Really neat autistic artists presenting their art. There were also all kinds of activities, different sensory activities for kids and for other people. Just a really, and it was a very nice turnout. So just a really neat event. Again, it's always a treat to see our amphitheater being used in a variety of ways, both for city events and for private events that are using the amphitheater for the public. So that was just another really cool opportunity. Then on Monday, I went to the Senior Center Food Bank, where they received a pretty significant donation from C4 of both food and hygiene items that were, sort of in great need for the clientele of the food bank, as well as a check for sponsorship for the senior center. So that was exciting. And then I met with Ani Gasparian from the Desert Sun, just on background. She reached out to get to know me as a new council member, so we had a great conversation. And I think that covers it for me.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for representing the city council at many of those events. I know that others, including myself, weren't able to go to. It's part of our great team that often at least one or a few of us can go when the rest of us can't, and I do appreciate how much you've jumped right in and are doing that.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Councilmember Ross.
Thank you so much. These last 3 weeks have been actually pretty tough for my family. Bob and I caught the flu, and not just the sniffle flu, the oh my God, we are so sick flu. And it lasted for 3 weeks. I'm just happy to say about 4 days ago, we turned the corner and said, there's a good chance we're going to live. No promises. I can't even explain how terrible it was, but I'm going to move forward instead of dwelling on it. I can report that tomorrow I will be the acting principal for the day at James Workman Middle School. It is so much fun. This is the third school I've been to doing principal for the day. I know Councilmember Lamb has done it many times as well. And the next day, we all have our Senior Inspiration Awards, where the Valley City honor one of their own. So we'll be excited to be there for that. Bob and I will be attending the No Kings Rally in Palm Springs on Saturday, and then back in the saddle full force by Monday. Thank you all who sent thoughts and well wishes, and sometimes food. I'm so lucky to share the city with you, our neighbors and friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you were definitely missed at our last council meeting, but we are so happy that you are mended, or at least well on the mend.
On the mend.
All right, next up is Councilmember Lamb.
Great, thank you. And I represent Cathedral City on the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy Committee, and I am vice chairman of that. And we recently had a project where, with the Friends of the Desert Mountain and the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy, it was called a land back, and it was 460 acres back to the Agua Caliente tribe of Cahuilla Indians, and it was a 640-acre parcel, and it covers parts of Cathedral City and Palm Springs. So that was a great event. Through that, I'll be meeting with Katie Barrows, who used to serve on the board of the Mountains Conservancy and worked for CVAG. Now she's a board member for the Oswet Land Trust. And Desert Dunes, which is a former golf course in Desert Hot Springs, is part of the Multiple Species Habitat Plan. And as that project, she wants to show what they're planning on doing and how to refurbish it as a nature preserve. So it's going to be a wonderful project, and it's another fabulous resource to our community. I did attend the Cathedral City Auto Center marketing meeting with our marketing person, Erica Bessaril, and it was a great event. It happens at 9:30 once a month, and it's a consortium of auto dealers who are in this particular group, and they're always talking about ways to, energize their business and meet the demand for cars, and love to have the city's support. And they have, as Eric always says when he gives out his chip, they took a chance on us a long time ago, and so we certainly want to be there to support them. So it's a great relationship building. So I really appreciate that. I did attend the AMVETS meeting, and AMVETS, it's American Veterans, and they have a post 66 here. Tom Swan Hernandez is the president of the AMVETS, and he always hosts and puts together, in addition to our veterans ceremony at Patriots Park, he puts on one at Desert Memorial Park here in Cathedral City. And I've always been invited as a representative of Cathedral City, so it's wonderful. And we were there celebrating his birthday. And I was joined by Lisa Middleton and Jeffrey Bernstein. Lisa Middleton is a former council person and mayor of Palm Springs, and Jeffrey Bernstein is a current council person for Palm Springs. Great fun. I attended the Butterfly Festival, and I can't believe it. This is the 5th year. I think as I get older, it just seems like just yesterday they invented the Butterfly Festival, and now it's 5. We had the 5th year celebration. But it was a great collaboration, and it's always wonderful to have our library highlighted. So Kristen Lehigh is always out there with books about butterflies, and great fun, and there's always fabulous art and kids zipping around like butterflies, so it was just adorable. And of course, Panorama Park is such a great spot, great venue, very popular. I did have dinner. I was invited as a guest with the folks from Tramview that I got to meet when I was first elected to council in 2019, and we developed this nice warm relationship, and they just wanted to say, let's get together and not talk shop and have some fun. So it's nice to be out with the community. And the last thing is the art show. That'll be in our amphitheater on Saturday. I'm looking forward to that. And it's quite a buzz. My husband and I live up in the Cove, and it's quite a buzz. There are all sorts of people that are interested in showcasing their art, being part of it, looking forward to it, making sure this is the Saturday place to be. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for representing at all these different events. All right, next up is Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Since we last met, I received a phone call from a cannabis marijuana cultivation business. This individual happens to be a friend of mine who's in the marijuana business. He called me frantically, and we're really worried that city code enforcement inspectors went to his facility, and they found quite a few violations on this property. And properly so, they were given a cease and desist letter to make sure that he wasn't operating improperly, and also they provided him with a notice of a hearing to revoke his license. And he was really worried about it, and he didn't know what to do. If this were to happen and he were to close his business, he can lose between $600,000 and $800,000. That's how much money they have invested in this property. So being so worried, he contacted me, and I listened to him, and I got an idea what the problems were, and I was able to arrange a meeting with city staff and the operator, the owner, and also the property owner. And staff did a great job. They presented him with all the violations to make sure that they were all clear, because they weren't quite sure exactly what violations they had, how many times they have violated the any code inspection notices, and they had things that they didn't even know, permits that they needed, that they didn't even know they needed to get. So anyway, we held our meeting, and the meeting was very productive. Staff still is pursuing the hearing to revoke his license. Hopefully that during this meeting, this process, they actually, as violations were brought up, the great thing you can say is these violations were also being taken care of immediately. So under our new ordinance, you can tell that it's starting to work, and where employees go out there to these properties and they implement the new ordinance, operators have to act and actually bring their property up to date. And it is working, and hopefully this business brings every single violation up to date and will continue to go along with their ordinance as well. They also had an issue with odor, of course, and under the new ordinance, they have been working on getting their odor control submitted, and they have already purchased a few carbon scrubbers to work in getting their odor controlled. So it was a great meeting. Staff did an amazing job working with them, so hopefully that will all be straightened out. I also had a meeting with a local philanthropist that is quite interested in actually doing something for the community for the two high schools. Once the Roadrunner Center gets completed, which will be in about a year and a half or so, he wants to make sure that kids from our community, from Cathedral City, and I also brought up the Rancho Mirage High School, which is primarily attended by Cathedral City residents, that they also need transportation to and from the Roadrunner Center. And not only that, but he's also going to be purchasing vehicles and paying people to transport students to and from the center to the high schools, and not only to our high schools, but also to the City of Desert Hot Springs residents, to make sure that they don't have any delays between the school and whatever they're picked up from. And they can also be dropped off directly to work. So they're picked up, and if they're finished with the Roadrunner classes and they need to get to work, they will also drop them off straight to work so they don't waste any time. So those are great news, and that's a developing story that hopefully in about a year it will develop. And this philanthropist has quite a bit of money. If you ever see those windmills, that's one of those guys. Okay, he's the owner of that. So that was very interesting. I was also invited to speak at the Riverside Public Women's Federate in Palm Desert. I spoke, and they wanted to know a little bit about myself as well as what's going on in Cathedral City. And once I told them what's going on in Cathedral City, all the development, street improvements, and everything that's going on, they were very excited to know all the great things that are going on. And a lot of them actually live here in Cathedral City, or they travel through Cathedral City. So they were excited to hear all the news. And I also attended a ribbon cutting at Plant Growth. The only problem is I never made it. I showed up, but I was looking for Suite 103, and it was right next to the Stonewall Democrats of the Desert, but I never saw the Suite 103, which should have been adjacent to them. Well, I believe it was F103, not C103. And unfortunately, I didn't see anyone from the city there, so I just stuck around for a few minutes and just left. So I tried to attend. And I also, as you know, I've been in contact with a local developer who is interested in helping the city develop the new upcoming recreation center. And he gave me some new information. And just to let you know, it's still preliminary, but just getting people interested in seeing other options is very uplifting, and the options could be great. And according to what I see, which is all just hypothetically talking and conversation, it seems like we could get something close to what has been proposed by Group 4 that did the study. And I also met with our city manager, and that's where I actually told him the news of my conversation with a developer, and hopefully in the near future we can get deeper into conversations. And I also had lunch with Scott Robinson from the Boys and Girls Club, and I just wanted to sit with him and find out what's going on with the Boys and Girls Club. And it had crossed my mind as to how is the Boys and Girls Club going to work along with the new recreation center and also the DRD. And I thought he had more of an idea what's going on, but he was really lost. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how it was going to work. So our conversation turned out to be a great conversation because he wants to make sure that that we keep him in the loop and there's open conversation between the city, DRD, and the Boys and Girls Club to make sure that the services that are provided, they're not provided to the same kids and they're not fighting for the same kids, that they actually he wants to make sure that they complement each other and they want to make sure that the benefits are the residents and not just doing repeatedly or repeated events. So that was a great conversation, and he just was really happy to hear that that the city is moving forward. And he didn't have all the information as to how much money was going to be invested from Measure W into the recreation center, and also for loan debt or anything else. So I brought him up to speed with that, and he was very thankful about it. And he just wants to make sure that we keep him in the loop. And of course, he also talked about that he's ready for this week's Meatball Festival, to make sure that on Sunday, be there, be square. The police department is going to be participating, the fire department, and I'm pretty sure our staff Cathedral City is going to be six. What was it?
There's going to be
Oh.
6 city teams.
Oh, wow.
Police, I think, police management, police officers, fire, the city manager's office, economic development, and code enforcement will all be competing.
Oh.
So there's quite a bit of rivalry going on at City Hall for the best meatball amongst everybody else competing.
I hate to be the judge. They're always delicious. And that concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everyone has been quite busy. All right, so our last meeting was on March 11th, the very next day. I did come to City Hall with a bunch of staff members to attend the Coachella Valley Community Association Institute workshop, where the organization that helps bring HOAs together to be educated and trained was here. Burtech was here. A number of city departments were here. Unfortunately, the HOA people were not here. There were no attendees, and it was online, and there were no online attendees. So, but we still want to thank everyone that participated in it. I know that it was felt that it's still a great idea, that really it would be great to put the HOA leaders in touch with the appropriate city staff and to have this type of a workshop where they could go over how to approach problems, commonalities, when things should go to the city, when things should be handled by the HOA. So my guess is it's going to get scheduled again. I know that was kind of a promise that day. So hopefully that will happen soon, and that they'll be able to work with their members to get those interested notified and attend. Sometimes you throw a party and nobody comes. So that was one of those times, but staff was ready. And then the next Saturday, thank you, Council Member Lamb, for attending the Butterfly Festival. I always like to attend, but I was at what we call the Rainbow Youth Summit, put on by a local nonprofit, Safe Schools. And it was a leadership seminar at College of the Desert. I know we had a number of volunteers, maybe even somebody from staff, and that was volunteer, and other members of the Cathedral City community that were there to support the youth. And so it was a good morning. So I was busy, but again, it's one of the strengths of our council is that we go to all these different events and try to make sure everything is, at least one of us is there to represent. On Monday the 16th, I attended the Coachella Valley Association of Governments Executive Committee, and also City Manager Andy Firestein was there. Sorry. And there were a number of events, a lot of the things that you work on, of course, on your other CVAG committees. You know, they come before the Executive Committee for discussion and approval, and a lot of it had to do, again, with CV Link, CV Sync, and some of the other big projects there. We did hear a presentation that was or at least a discussion by the representative from the city of Indian Wells having to do with airport noise. And so, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, but, and then there was an executive session. So that was on that Monday. And then the next day I escaped for a little while. It got hot here, so I ran up to the mountains for a few days. So again, thankfully, again, we have people that are attending these different events, and some of us can get away every once in a while. And then I was back, though, over last weekend, and then on Monday, I attended the Riverside County Transportation Commission's Budget and Implementation Committee meeting. I was able to go to the remote site in Palm Desert, so I didn't have to go all the way to Riverside. And then later that day, I had another Riverside County Transportation Commission meeting. This one was virtual. It was on project funding strategies. It was an ad hoc committee, so as you know, all of Riverside County, we don't have enough money to do the transportation projects that are needed. That, of course, we heard a presentation and study session about some of the great work that we're doing here locally in Cathedral City. But there are projects everywhere from Riverside County Transportation and Coachella Valley Association of Governments and all the different funding streams. There's not enough money, so part of what we're trying to do is work on funding strategies, and one of those that's being discussed is maybe an extension of the current sales tax, so it wouldn't, the transportation portion, so that it wouldn't increase at this point, but that they could look at longer funding strategies on some of these projects that are still on the list. Out here in Coachella Valley, that list is maintained by the Coachella Valley Association of Governments in their TPPS, they call it traffic prioritization list. On the other side of the county, it's actual projects. But some of that Measure A money also flows through as part of local roads funding directly to the city. That was the Measure A from the study session that we talked about. So there's a lot of work going on with that. And then later on Monday, I went to Palm Springs Airport, also joined by the city manager for a meeting on aircraft noise and complaints in the community. And so it was very productive and a good meeting as far as getting information out. And they have agreed to come and present here at City Council. I know the city manager has worked on that. I may have a date already at study session.
They are scheduled to come before council on April 22nd.
All right, very good. And of course, they spoke about what's their responsibility, which of course is really at the airport itself, as far as noise, and then what is not their responsibility or what they don't have control over. The FAA has control over, which is the aircraft as they are leaving or arriving. But they have taken the position, which I think we would agree with, that even things that are outside of the jurisdiction, they want to be a conduit for communication, and they also want to advocate for the local region, any of their concerns. So they will be with us to kind of present where they're at and what can be done. And then the next day, last Tuesday, which I guess was just yesterday, I attended Career Days at Landau Elementary School. I guess they actually had 2 days. So on Monday, they had a number of people in a wide variety of jobs come. I think our police and fire participated on that day because the kids were all excited about still talking about police cars and things like that. But I attended with a number of other people from a variety of careers. There were medical people, there was an engineer there. I think they liked the engineer because I think he made the most money out of everyone that went that day. It was one of the things kids were very interested in. And then I went and spoke about what it's like to be on the city council, and the mayor. The city council and the mayor made the least amount of money, by the way, but we all know that. So, but it was very interesting and a lot of fun. All right, and everybody has talked about what's kind of coming up, so I will just kind of touch this Friday. We do have Senior Inspiration Award. That is something the public can attend. I think it starts at 11 o'clock, and it's at the Grand Hyatt in Indian Wells. And we do have a local nominee that will be awarded is Mr. Michael Koken, a great volunteer at so many organizations here in the Cathedral City in particular, and of course the the muscle behind the scene for Dinner with Patsy. So we're very happy to be able to have Michael Kochen as our Cathedral City honoree. And that's on Friday. And on Saturday, the Cathedral City Festival of Arts has already been mentioned. It's going to be in our amphitheater starting at 10 o'clock. So make sure you stop by. It's a free event. So you can stop by at any time and enjoy and support the local artists and find some art you can take home. I'm sure there'll be some for sale. And then if you haven't had enough by Saturday, Sunday is the International Meatball Festival, and it will be at the Boys and Girls Club starting at 1 p.m. And as we've already heard, there's going to be heavy competition amongst the city departments and others on the best meatball, but it's also a lot of fun. There's usually games and music and food, other food besides meatballs and drink, and it's a good chance to support our local Boys and Girls Club. And then just a reminder, Tastes and Sounds continues. We had a break this week, but next week you won't want to miss because that will be on the 31st. We'll have Giselle Wu and the Night Owls at Tastes and Sounds, another local group, very well known and excellent. And then we'll have another week off so everybody can recover. And then we'll have our final one on April 14th. We're scheduled to have the Rancho Mirage High School. I think the band is going to be there. They were scheduled earlier, but were canceled due to weather, so they will be the ones to finish out. So mark those on your calendar, the 31st, and then in April on the 14th. And then that following Saturday, because we won't have a meeting yet, you'll want to come back to the amphitheater because we have our inaugural family fitness event starting at 9 a.m. That's on April 4th, Saturday, April 4th. So come and check that out too. That's another free event. All right, a lot going on in Cathedral City. Thank you, and thank you again, Council, for all the work that you do, making sure that we are represented and for all your work with the different organizations and groups and businesses and everyone that are working in Cathedral City. All right, that's the end of council reports. We will move on to our consent agenda with a reminder that item 3D and then item 3G are pulled and will be presented immediately after the consent agenda. City Clerk, could you please read the remainder of the items?
Item 3A is to waive full reading of ordinances on the agenda. Item 3B is the Commissioner Committee member attendance record. Item 3C is approval of the March 11, 2026 meeting minutes. Item 3D was pulled for separate consideration. Item 3E is to provide second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 9.114 of Title 9 Planning and Zoning of the Cathedral City Municipal Code. Item 3F is the ratification of an agreement between the city and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Item 3G was pulled for separate consideration. Item 3H is to oppose AB 1883, Public Employees Retirement Benefits, and authorize the city manager to sign a letter of opposition on behalf of the city. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Excellent. I think it's AB 1383, right?
I'm sorry, AB 1383.
That's fine. We know what you meant. It's on the paperwork. All right, City Council, any questions or comments on the remainder of the consent agenda?
I don't, but I'll move to approve.
All right, well, I'll ask for public
comments.
comments
Thank you.
first. Are there any speaker cards?
Mayor, we did not receive any.
All right, anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on the remainder of the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will take that motion from you there, Councilmember Lamb. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Gordon.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Please vote. And motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you very much. All right, we will return to the items that were separately pulled. Item 3D is to approve a resolution adopting an updated citywide salary schedule, and I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to provide some comments on this item. We don't have a formal presentation, but both myself and Susie Soren are available for comment. So the reason I wanted to pull this item really was to separate it from the ratification of the AFSCME MOU that was on the consent calendar as well. This item has the effect of implementing that item. So considering this separately, in our opinion, was appropriate. So it does have the effect of implementing provisions within the AFSCME MOU. Separately, it also achieves a second intent. And I think this is something that merits some additional discussion too. And I want to clarify that this is not adding allocated positions. While we are adding some additional job classifications within the salary schedule, we're not increasing the allocated positions beyond what's in the budget. In your approved budget for this fiscal year, we have 230 allocated positions across the organization. There are 231 allocated positions in fiscal year 26-27. We're not changing that, and there is no budget amendment to increase salary or our budget outside of what is otherwise covered in this item. So the change, adding those additional job classifications, what that enables is the promotion place or the reclassification of incumbent employees that are already within the organization. We have a policy for the reclassification of employees that allows us to look at how a job has changed. And where a job has changed and the position is currently and will continue to have increased levels of responsibility or complexity, we have the ability to reclassify that position. But we can't do that unless the position is in the salary schedule. So by adding those job classifications to the salary schedule, we're able to implement 3 of those reclassifications for the positions that are identified in the staff report. A code compliance specialist, the director of communications and engagement, and a senior enterprise system analyst. So the effect of your action on this item would allow for the completion of the reclassification of those 3 job classifications, those 3 incumbent employees. The fourth is the addition of a part-time limited-term office assistant. By adding that into the salary schedule, that would enable us to essentially contract for a temp to provide additional services to the city staff. So the changes here are not increasing the budget, not adding allocated positions. Any increase in salary that would be absorbed within the operational budget.
Okay, so if you don't mind, could you go over those 3 and talk about if there are new positions, which positions are they coming from, or the reclassification coming from? And so does that position title then go away?
So once the incumbents are reclassified to the new positions, those old positions would remain vacant.
So they remain on the schedule, but they'll be vacant.
They remain on the schedule for now. They could be removed through a future salary schedule. But to complete that reclassification, we need to add the job classification to the salary schedule.
Well, the concern, I think, would be that you reclassify somebody into a new position and you leave their old position, and then does anyone look at that as like, oh, now I have a position to fill, and then they start a recruitment or they do a promotion into these positions?
We wouldn't do that off of the salary schedule. That gets to the allocated position table in the budget and the 230 positions that we have allocated in the budget.
Okay, so our action wouldn't actually increase that amount, and so somewhere along the way, a position would be kind of frozen until a budget, somebody came by.
It would be a position that is listed in the salary schedule, but where there is not an incumbent employee with that job classification. So they're 2 distinct separate documents. You have the budget that has the allocated positions, and then you have the salary schedule, which essentially takes those positions and identifies a grade, identifies a salary range for them. So you may have positions that are in the salary schedule that are not in your allocated position table within the budget.
I got you. So, like, for example, let's just, so I can make sure I've got this clear in my head. The code compliance specialist, that's a reclassification from is a code officer, administrative something?
The individual that's currently in that position is an administrative assistant 2. So this person would be reclassified, should this go through, from the administrative assistant 2 into that code compliance specialist. And that admin assistant 2 position would still be in the salary schedule. There are other admin assistant 2s within the organization, but that FTE, if you will, that's in code compliance, that would become the code compliance specialist too. They would
Okay.
not be backfilling another admin
I mean,
assistant.
I know some organizations do like position control numbers. They do, especially as you get larger. I don't know if we're there yet, because otherwise sometimes things will happen and 6 months later the department head says, "Oh, I have a position in my department and I don't remember why, but I think I can hire somebody in this position." Or
This is not increasing our ability to hire additional FTEs or hire additional staff. It's merely providing that flexibility, that administrative control to be able to promote an incumbent from one job classification into another without, say, backfilling or filling that old position.
Okay, so we'll just quickly go over them. So the other one you mentioned, so that was coming from, the code compliance specialist is coming from an administrative assistant. The director of communications and engagement is coming from what
That's
position?
a manager position.
A manager, okay. And that would also remain on the schedule, or is that one removed? I don't remember seeing that one on the schedule.
Let me pull it up, I apologize. Having technical difficulties.
It's okay. I was going to say, look at it on paper, but that schedule was never added back to our, our book.
Good evening, Mayor
Hi.
and Mayor Pro Tem, council
you.
members. So in answer to your question, yes, the position will be deleted as it's reclassified when we come back and bring it, but we need to have the other position approved to put this person in that position.
Okay, all right. That's why I wanted to go one by one, because it looked like you're saying there's still going to be an administrative assistant, but that manager position, once it gets moved to the director position, it looks like in the book that it was going to be eliminated.
Correct.
All right. And then the senior enterprise systems analyst is,
It's currently an analyst position.
all right, is that analyst, there are other analysts, so that analyst position will remain?
It's a specific analyst. It's a technical position within the IT department that
Right.
manages our
I
applications.
got it, but I'm just saying that the position that person comes from, they're going to it's going to go into a new position, and I'm assuming that for
I
that
don't
one.
see either of those two positions, the old positions in the
Okay, so
salary
they've
schedule.
been deleted.
So it looks like those have been deleted.
Well,
from
and
the salary schedule.
that would solve any issue of filling them without some other type of action. All right. Thank you very much. Council, questions?
No.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other questions on this. I think I shared that it would be at least my desire that if we do these kind of very well-deserved and very well-meaning changes, that they come in some other type of action, or there be some council discussion with them so that we're aware of them before we see them on a salary schedule on the agenda. So I don't know if council feels the same. Be the consensus, probably make it a little bit cleaner. So we are all fans of transparency, and there's nothing saying that, anything was done here other than maybe following an old method, but I think it's just more transparent that there's some type of other information that comes to council, either in a meeting or otherwise, so that we don't just see them on a salary schedule.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item?
We have none, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this item? All right, then we'll return it back to council.
Move to approve.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Please vote. And motion carries, all ayes.
All right. Next up is item 3G that was removed from the consent calendar consideration of support for Senate Bill 872, State Water Infrastructure Funding. Do you have, I know I'm the one that pulled it, but do you have any information you'd like to start off with?
Sure, I can provide a couple of brief remarks, and Eric Bessariel has been in contact with the Desert Water Agency as well as the Coachella Valley Water District and can provide some additional supporting information. So the initial remarks that I would like to share with council is that I made the decision to place this item as well as the other bill on the agenda for council's awareness and direction. This may be a change from what you've seen before, but as we were approached by Desert Water Agency on this particular item, and as we looked at the Cal City's position on the other item, I realized we don't have a legislative policy, and really that is a gap. We don't have clear direction from the council on how and when to engage in legislative affairs. We don't have a legislative analyst. I don't think we have the capacity, the bandwidth to do that. It's not something that I want to actively do, but we are occasionally approached by other agencies, or we see something with Cal Cities where we do want to take a position, and having a legislative policy would put us in a stronger place to have some guidance, to have some rules on how to handle that. Here in the moment, we don't have enough time to react. We're currently in a legislative session, and for us to be able to opine on this bill, on other legislation, getting this to council is the most appropriate course of action. Ideally, what I'd like to do is to bring back a framework for a legislative policy for council's consideration over the summer, so that we have some agreement from the council on how we can engage either in legislative affairs or even when we're sending letters supporting earmarks or anything similar. So we'll come back to that over the summer, but for the moment, this particular item, this was a request by the Desert Water Agency, and simultaneously we also learned that the Coachella Valley Water District supports it. We are not a water provider, but we're all beneficiaries of our water supply, and this particular item has benefits through the State Water Project to ensure a long-term sustainable water supply for our region. And with that, I'll turn this over to Eric, who can provide some additional comments on the bill.
Hi.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. So before you today, just to give you some background about Senate Bill 872, on March 9th this year, we were approached by Desert Water Agency's Director of Public Affairs, as well as Public Information Officer Victoria Lort, requesting support for Senate Bill 872. Subsequently, on March 11th, we received additional correspondence from Coachella Valley Water District through its Government Affairs Program Manager, as well requesting support for Senate Bill 872. Senate Bill 872, authored by Senator Jerry McNeary, proposes a long-term funding strategy to address critical infrastructure challenges within California's State Water Project and Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. A little bit of background about the Senate bill. It proposes a long-term funding commitment to address critical deficiencies in California's water infrastructure by appropriating $150 million annually over 20 years to the Department of Water Resources for State Water Project conveyance repairs, along with an additional $150 million annually for Delta levee improvements. These investments are intended to restore lost capacity caused by land subsidence and reinforce aging infrastructure that is essential to statewide water delivery. To kind of fast forward and give you just some summary on this, from the local perspective, these investments, they add to the reliability not directly tied to Cathedral City, but to Cathedral City's overall economic development, efforts such as housing, production, long-range planning efforts, and so forth, as well as the alignment with the regional partners such as DWA and Coachella Valley Water District. These strengthen our intergovernmental coordination and ensure that the city remains engaged with policy decisions that have direct implications for local residents and businesses. Supporting SB 872 positions the city as a collaborative partner in advancing sustainable, reliable water infrastructure to both regional and statewide levels. There is no fiscal impact, direct fiscal impact associated with adopting a position of support, and the support as well is tied to Goal B of our 5-year strategic plan, community investment, where the objective is that Cathedral City roads, gateways, and other infrastructure are well planned, designed, constructed, and maintained. And with that, staff recommends that the City Council consider adopting a position of support for Senate Bill 872 and authorize City Manager to sign a letter of support on behalf of the City of Cathedral City. I am here to answer any additional questions you might have.
So thank you for reading the staff report, basically. Beyond the actual request, did the city do any research into AB 872 or SB 872 or what it might mean for other funding recipients?
Yes, so we've done some level of research on that, as well as seeing what other additional agencies have supported this. From what we can see, what this really does is just allow there to be funding to go towards this, not necessarily add or remove funding. There could be indirect implications in future allocations, per se. That's something that we don't really know at this point, but it could. In general, though, what we see is that this bill is supported by these government agencies that we work with directly, and them reaching out and requesting such support is something that I think warranted bringing this subject to all of you to consider.
Oh, sure, for consideration. All right. So I did pull the item, so real quickly, my concern on this is when I looked into it, I didn't see it on the Cal City's hot list of ones they were supporting or not against, or supporting or opposing. So I looked into it, and it actually, if you've heard of the old Cap and Trade Fund, it is now called Cap and Invest. Yes. That's where this money would come from. And there's been some legislation recently, and I'm not going to try to recite and be an expert on it, but where it set up tiers. So the money that comes into that Cap and Invest, it goes through some tiers, and one of the the beginning tiers is that it would go to backfill a fire resiliency fund, and then the legislature would have a whack at about $1 billion of it, and then it would go to the second tier, and out of that second tier, high-speed rail automatically gets $1 billion, and then and then it eventually flows to a third tier, and in that, if there's anything left over in that third tier, there is a number of different funds that get the money. And so my concern was that, of course, there's nothing in here that talks about that flow. You wouldn't necessarily expect the water districts to do that, and if they got it from their groups, to even maybe know about that whole structure. But there are some of the funds in that third tier that historically also have benefited Cathedral City either directly in some of the housing or transportation funds that we get as the city. Some that flow through RCTC, which caught my eye because I have some knowledge of going on there. So that included the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Fund, the Transit Intercity Rail, also known as TIRCIP, which is helping fund the Coachella Valley Rail Study, Low Carbon Transit Operations, and others, including Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Funds and Healthy and Resilient Forest Funds. So I felt that just having this on consent, we really needed to have some more discussion, because this would move this fund, which really has to do with water subsidence projects in the Delta area, which eventually some of it could flow through to here, but it moved that in a higher priority than some of these other funds. And I thought, well, for transparency, we should at least have that information. Christina Gordon, you had a question?
I did.
I can talk more about what I found in my research, but I'll let you go first.
I guess I'm curious, what is the risk either way of signing on or not signing on in support of this?
Well, to kind of add, really what it's doing, it's allowing this to be part of a lot of these projects that you're mentioning to be potentially funded. So it sort of adds as another potential candidate for projects that could be funded. A lot of these are, I guess, hypothetical to some degree. So we're not exactly sure to what level it would imply or affect existing funding, but it would be just another type of project that could be eligible for the funding.
Is there any risk, though, to our taking a position or not taking a position?
This bill has strong bipartisan support. When we look at the list of agencies that have signed on to it, we have everyone from the California Building Industry Association to environmental groups. I think as we look at the bill, and we did conduct analysis on this, the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta is a substantial water source throughout the state of California and for the State Water Project. And I think that's where Desert Water Agency and the Coachella Valley Water District really have signed on to this bill, that the improvements to the levees, the repairs to the water conveyance system have the effect of improving the reliability of that water delivery system into the future. And I think that's where there is strong support from many agencies recognizing the importance of this system. And Mayor, to your point, I think you have done that additional research with RCTC. And I'm not trying to take anything away from you, but to confirm that this is not competing with those other.
That's correct. I wanted to allow her to ask a question first, since I had been doing the talking. But again, being somewhat concerned about this, I reached out to some of the other agencies that deal with some of these other grants. And has already been shared, because I shared it with the city manager just today when I heard back, was that they did an analysis of it. They were very appreciative for the opportunity to do an analysis, because the risk for us signing on is nothing. It's a letter of support. But the risk, if it went one way, could be, well, funding would go to this thing first, and there wouldn't be enough funding for things that have directly benefited the city. And so, do you want to sign on to something that is going to take some money away from other funds, housing funds or transportation funds that the city has either sought or seeking or will likely seek in the future? So thankfully, the Transportation Commission does have some legislative analysts, and they looked at it and they feel comfortable with this bill. They feel that if it passes and the funding is designated, it's not going to come from the pool. It's going to come from some of that money that the legislature gets to decide what to spend. And so that would be decided normally in some type of process, earmarking process with the legislature anyways, so they're comfortable that it's okay that this bill doesn't diminish the rights. But again, they appreciated the ability to at least analyze it, and so that we, as municipalities, aren't signing on to it to their own detriment down the road. So,
Have any other cities signed on to or sent a letter or taken similar action? Do we know?
a couple.
Yes. We have a long list of agencies here, and I could read this, but
She asked about cities, so.
yes.
Yes, as far as cities, none locally here. We have City of Beverly Hills, City of Fullerton, several counties.
Virtually every water agency.
City of
across-
Glendale Water and Power, and of course,
Yeah.
all the water agencies all over, so.
And just to add one additional note, the request for signature on this, it was expressed to Desert Water Agency that we weren't going to meet their request deadline. So this really was just to understand the position of council, as well as to sort of kind of go through this exercise to know that when these things come up, we're not just signing them, that we're trying to, in an appropriate way, bring it forward.
Thank you. And I totally agree with that. And with what has been learned, I support us signing on to this. But I wanted to pull it, well, to do more research and to ask the city to do more research. And also to maybe bring up how we are doing these, because it's not a good idea. In fact, it's not even meaningful just because a friend agency asks for something that we automatically approve it. There should be some real analysis, and it should be in the direct benefit of Cathedral City, its residents, its businesses. And I believe this one is, but it wasn't apparent at the beginning until we did the analysis that how the funding would come and how it would affect other funding. So it can be a little more complicated. But as the city manager brought up, maybe this is a good example of the need to work on some type of a legislative platform or a policy. So when we do get these requests, some of them that are maybe supported by the league and are clearly in the best interest of the city it's easy. You can put them on consent, and other ones that maybe are, is this in the best interest or not? Then it maybe would warrant more discussion. And if something's clearly not in the benefit of the city or to the detriment of the city, we would be able to see that and not have to, go any further with that. It's been kind of the practice, I share with the city manager, and you all know, maybe Christina doesn't know, but we probably chatted about it, that we don't necessarily use a lot of council time usually arguing over support or not support of propositions and bills and all that kind of thing. And we kind of made it our practice that if something has a clear benefit to the city, we support it. And if it doesn't have a clear benefit to the city, but it maybe ancillary touches people in the city, then maybe it's not the city's business to tell people how to vote, either on propositions or even our legislators how to vote. But if it has a clear benefit to the city, then of course we do want to support it. So that's really what this was all about. I actually applaud the city manager for putting these items on the agenda. It has kind of been the practice before that if it was league supported and it was generally felt like it was in the vein of things, the city manager would kind of make a spitball, all right, we'll go for it, and we'll support it. Sometimes they would ask the mayor or others on the council to do the letters, but it's eventually going to be problematic because the city council is the one that runs the city, and it is appropriate for the city council to weigh in or have an opportunity to make comment on these when appropriate. But it's also with the expediency, other agencies, including RCTC, which I'm familiar with, they do have a legislative platform. Bills do come up, and they can take action on them based on the legislative platform and then just get that confirmed later. So that's probably a good idea. All right, I see Councilmember Lamb. Did you have a question?
I just agree with everything you said, and that is, I'm supportive of this action, but going forward, the concentration should be in my mind, on Cathedral City. I mean, if there's a project that's coming up in front of us and it's about a lot line adjustment, I drive out there to see where the lot is, and, I know what's happening. I don't know what's happening here. So, this kind of a letter is it's like a letter of endorsement. There is no, we're not tied into anything. There aren't any other ramifications. But going forward, I have lots to say about taking on issues that don't concern us and that we have no control over, and that I don't want to encumber or do anything with somebody else's tax dollars. So anyway, that's me.
Good point. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, both of you have taken the words right out of my mouth. We always tend to stay away from either county, state, or federal issues, as both of you mentioned. And this is just a letter of endorsement, as also mentioned. But I agree with you guys that we should keep it as a policy, that council policy, that we should shy away from anything in the future that does not concern Cathedral City. Councilmember Ross, Lamb, you put it pretty much precisely what we do. If there's an issue, we actually drive by the property or the business or whatever it is, but when we can actually do something about it. But if it's state or federal, I'm not concerned with that. I don't want to waste my time either. So, great comments. Thank you.
All right, good. Anyone else? All right, thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item?
Mayor, I did not receive any.
Anyone in the audience that wants to speak on this item? All right, if not, to come back to the council, the request is to consider supporting this letter.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Gordon. Please vote. And motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you so much. And I heard the city manager says he intends to bring back a policy, so I would ask the council, is there a consensus to add that on the agenda to have a policy on how to handle legislative requests and stuff? So,
Yes.
all right, thank you. You have your consensus for that.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, we do have something on the regular agenda tonight. All Our legislative actions on the legislative calendar. Item 5A is the 2025 Housing Element Annual Progress Report. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening we have Dawn Camps, and she also has a team behind her. Sandra Molina and Cynthia Schultz may join in as part of the presentation. So the council is going to hear the annual progress report, but this annual progress report goes a little bit deeper. And this does evaluate not only our production over the course of 2025, but goes a little deeper than that. And it looks at our housing element. It looks at our production compared to other Valley cities and just where we're at right now with our implementation of the housing element, what else we may need to consider. And this will get into pro-housing designation, and it's my encouragement to council that we think about this presentation as a starting point for the discussion. This may be another item that we want to bring back through a study session to dig a little deeper into the pro-housing designation and to see what else we need to do concurrent with a development code update to meaningfully implement the goals in our housing element and to make that progress we need to make to meet our RENA allocation as well to implement our housing element. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn Camps.
Thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. This evening, I'll be presenting the 2025 Annual Housing Element Progress Report. So state law requires that all cities prepare an annual progress report on the state and implementation of the housing element of the general plan. This annual progress report must be submitted to HCD by April 1st of each year. It tracks the city's housing production through planning entitlements as well as building permits issued and completed in the previous calendar year. And it also tracks progress on implementing the programs in the housing element. The annual progress report was provided as an attachment to the staff report. So this table shows the number of units that were allocated to Cathedral City by the Southern California Association of Governments through the RENA process for the 2021 to 2029 planning period. As shown in the table, the city's allocation is for 2,549 units, which are distributed across the 5 income categories shown here. The annual progress report tracks the number of entitlements that were approved as well as the number of building permits issued and completed in 2025. As shown on this table, no entitlements were approved for residential units in 2025. However, building permits were issued for 295 units and building permits were completed for 195 units. Please note that while entitlements issued and building permits completed are also tracked in the annual progress report, it's only building permits issued that are used to track progress towards the RENA allocation. Of the 131 building permits that were issued for single-family units in 2025, 65 of them were for the Campanile project, 41 were for the, 41 were for the Vesta Adesina project, 33 were for Rio del Sol, and 13 were infill units. I'll also note that while the zeros in the entitlements column may look alarming, there are approximately 1,600 units in the pipeline that have been entitled in previous years, but just have not yet received building permits issued.
So some of our large apartment complex, for example, those were in previous years.
That's right.
The years all run together. They seem like they were not that long ago, but.
Yeah, so those 1,600 units include the Wren, which was 200 units, several hundred units in the Verano project as well. I think that included 300 moderate income units as well. So those were all previously entitled, but just have not reached the building permit stage for this year.
Thank you.
The affordability of units that's reported in the annual progress report was based on the listed rent or sales price when that data is available. And in the case of accessory dwelling units, anticipated rent is also collected as part of the building permit application process. However, in both cases when sales price or rent was not available, the units are assumed to be market rate and affordable for above moderate income households. So of the 295 building permits that were issued in 2025, 35% of the units are categorized as affordable for extremely low and very low income households, 5% for low income households, 1% for moderate income households, and 59% for above moderate income households. Of the units that are categorized as extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income, 25 of those were permits issued for accessory dwelling units, and the other 96 are part of the Desert Marigold project, which is shown in this image here. So the permit for Desert Marigold was the only building permit that was subject to a deed restriction for affordability in 2025. As you know, this project was developed by Abode Communities and converted the existing extended stay hotel into 96 deed-restricted supportive housing units that are affordable for very low-income households. And this building permit was also finalized in 2025. So the 2025 Annual Progress Report measures progress towards the RHNA on the 5th year of the 2021 to 2029 housing element planning period. This table summarizes the total number of building permits that were approved over the first 5 years of this planning period for each level of affordability and relative to the number of units that were allocated for the RHNA for that category. Overall, the city is just over a quarter of the way through the total units that are required by the RHNA allocation. We've made meaningful progress in the above moderate income category, which shows 40% completed in that category. And we've also made good progress in the extremely low income category, and that's almost entirely because of the Desert Marigold project. However, there is still a lot of ground to make up in the very low, low, and moderate income categories.
May I ask you a question before you move on?
Absolutely.
So the Desert Marigold has, what are you, you're pointing, no, I am on. I'm on. Oh, thank you. I was just over there this last week. They are not, fully filled. They don't have all of their units filled by any means, maybe half are filled. Are we still counting all units?
Yeah, for the purposes of the RHNA allocation, we count them when the building permit's issued, and that counts it towards our allocation. So even if they're not all filled yet, they would still count towards.
What if the RHNA organization comes a knocking?
It's per their policy that it's counted based on
Okay.
building permits issued.
Thank you.
So in order to get a sense of Cathedral City's progress towards RHNA relative to the other cities in the Coachella Valley, this table shows the city's progress relative to the other cities for the 2024 Annual Progress Report, so that's last year's report. The percentages show the number of building permits issued from 2021 to 2024 for each income category relative to each city's RHNA for that category, so each city has its own allocation. As of the 2024 Annual Progress Report, Cathedral City had made more progress towards its 6-cycle RHNA than Desert Hot Springs and Coachella, but less progress than Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage, Indian Wells, La Quinta, and Indio. While several cities have made significant progress towards meeting their RHNA targets overall, housing production in many cities is lagging for the lower income categories. However, I will also note that based on what we know is coming in other cities, we do know that Rancho Mirage has issued building permits for another 235 units in the very low and low income categories, and Palm Desert has issued building permits for another 231 units in the extremely low, very low, and low income categories in 2025. So where we see some zeros in this table right now, our neighboring cities are continuing to make progress towards those categories. The Annual Progress Report also requires reporting on the city's progress in implementing each of the programs in the housing element. The table at the top of this slide summarizes the implementation status assigned to each of the programs in the Annual Progress Report. So to start looking at the completed category, this includes some of the programs that were implemented through the comprehensive zoning ordinance amendments that were made in 2022 to ensure consistency with the recently adopted general plan update and housing element update. In terms of the continuous category, many of these programs are advanced on an ongoing basis through activities that are undertaken in the Community and Economic Development Department. So that includes the project review process from the Development Services Committee, ongoing meetings between our economic development manager and affordable housing developers, as well as code compliance activities to support healthy living conditions through the enforcement of state housing law and the building code. However, some of the housing element programs are not currently implemented through specific regulatory standards or procedures. These include programs that are intended to facilitate housing production, particularly for units that are affordable for lower income households. So for example, negotiating for 10 lower income units per year through applications for specific plans, planned unit developments, and tentative tract maps. Allowing multifamily developments by right if they provide at least 20% of the units for lower income households. And providing fee waivers, flexible development standards, and expedited processing to incentivize and facilitate affordable housing projects through the division of larger lots. So that brings me to the Pro-Housing Designation Program. The Pro-Housing Designation Program is administered by HCD, and it is a certification that is awarded to jurisdictions that demonstrate a proactive approach in accelerating housing production. I understand that potentially making an application for this designation was discussed in February at the strategic planning workshop with the City Council. The benefit of the certification for the jurisdictions that receive it is both eligibility for dedicated grant funding as well as a competitive advantage when applying for other grant funding. To qualify, jurisdictions must demonstrate compliance with state housing laws and must also demonstrate implementation of policies across 4 categories. So those 4 categories are favorable zoning and land use policies, acceleration of housing production timeframes, reduction of construction and development costs, and providing financial subsidies. To be eligible for the designation, cities must achieve a minimum number of points in each one of those categories. However, the higher the score, the greater the competitive advantages when applying for those grants. The Pro-Housing Designation is relevant to the Housing Element Annual Progress Report because by implementing some of the housing element programs that were discussed in that previous slide, the city may earn additional points towards the designation. Staff, and particularly my colleague Cynthia Schultz, is currently assessing the city's eligibility for this designation, including how many points we could potentially achieve currently, and in areas where we might be short, looking for opportunities to gain additional points towards the designation. While the development code update is underway, we do have an opportunity to look at some of the programs that are already in our housing element and to translate these programs into more actionable policies and development standards that directly drive the production of housing and that would ultimately support the city's application for the pro-housing designation, should we pursue it. Some examples of such policies could include flexible parking standards for housing developments, particularly if they include affordable units, rather than broadly reducing parking requirements across all land uses. Providing more flexibility in development standards such as setbacks, lot coverage, or density that again applies specifically to affordable housing developments or mixed-use projects that include residential units. Streamlined approval processes for or by right provisions for qualifying housing projects, particularly if a portion of the units are dedicated for lower income households. As well as fee waivers or fee reductions and other financial incentives that are tied specifically to housing development rather than applied across all development types. So I'd like to underscore that the city does have an opportunity right now. The state is already requiring local governments to increase housing production to meet the RHNA allocation. And through the Pro-Housing Designation program, HCD is effectively providing jurisdictions with a toolkit of policies that can be implemented to support this required housing production. Also through the designation program, HCD is providing funding opportunities for jurisdictions that do implement these policies. While the development code is underway, the city has the opportunity to adopt these policies and potentially take advantage of these funding opportunities and ultimately to promote housing production and to meet the RHNA allocation. As the city manager mentioned in the introduction, the intention of bringing it up today is to really tee up this discussion and potentially a future discussion in greater detail could be held. So in terms of fiscal impact for the Housing Element Annual Progress Report, there is no impact. The Housing Element Annual Progress Report is associated or aligned with Goal F of the strategic plan, particularly as it relates to affordable housing. And that concludes my presentation. Staff recommends that the City Council receive the 2025 Housing Element Annual Progress Report and authorize its transmittal to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the California Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. All right, Council,
I have a question. Let me guess.
you do. Did you hit your request to speak button?
Well, I didn't.
Go ahead, it's all right.
Lord, I'm right here. So there's something I don't understand. Does the property have to be in the city of Cathedral City to take advantage of it? Or does it have to be owned by a resident? Because I know several of us on council here, we own properties that aren't in Cathedral City. I own 2 apartment complexes. They're not here. But we are trying to meet those RHNA numbers by providing them as low-income housing. And we're as they say, we're doing the right thing. But I'm not sure if we get to take advantage of that if it's by a citizen of Cathedral City who owns the properties.
Is this for meeting our RHNA allocation? My understanding is that it would have to be within the city limits.
It has to be,
Perhaps you would like your properties to be annexed into Cathedral City.
no. It's okay, so we can't, even if we buy land someplace else and build low-income housing, that does not have any advantage. It's all money from Cathedral City residents. We don't get to take advantage of that.
If it's in another jurisdiction, I think it would go to that jurisdiction's RHNA numbers. of
I'd need
course.
to understand why that was someday, but thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez, you have questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do. My first question is this. Have we looked at what other cities like Palm Springs, Palm Desert, and La Quinta are doing? Because Palm Springs is doing fairly well with the RHNA numbers, so is Palm Desert and La Quinta. Have we looked or talked to them as to what they're doing, how they're coming about to accomplishing their goals? What are they providing to the builders or developers? And or what are developers looking for in those cities that they're building there? Obviously, if they're not building here, there has to be a reason. Either the city doesn't have the property to provide to them for free, or the developers are asking the city for certain reductions in fees or whatever it is. If we can reach out to these developers or to the cities as to how are they able to achieve or very close to achieving these numbers, why are we not doing it? If we can get close to finding out as to, okay, give us some ideas how you're doing it so we can implement it in our city. That's one thing. And it's very important.
Answer that.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem, let me leap in there to provide an initial response, and staff can provide a deeper response. So we have had discussions with other cities. We've also had multiple discussions with affordable housing developers. And I think the answer is complicated, that there's multiple layers. I would say that cities have found success using city-owned land, using successor agency funding to catalyze some affordable housing projects. As well, having objective design standards, permitting affordable housing as a ministerial or by right process that creates certainty and predictability. The fee waivers that were mentioned in Dom's presentation, that has the effect of reducing the cost of an affordable housing project. So I think there are some ideas out there. We've seen the success that other cities have had improving the certainty, the predictability, reducing the cost of affordable housing projects by multiple means. So I think there are some good examples for us to follow. And then as well, the HCD through the pro-housing designation, that toolkit really is a list of best practices. So as we look at that, it's not just a checklist, but there are some ideas in there that we can follow that would improve our chances of success working with many of these affordable housing developers. So we continue to meet with affordable housing developers. We continue to pursue opportunities where they exist. And I think a lot of times it's a matter of alignment of resources and opportunity.
Well, thank you. If the numbers look so great for these cities, we should definitely pursue their key successes and what can we do, if whatever is possible. Another question is, can you tell us what constitutes extremely low, very low, low, and what can the city do to accept those numbers? If a developer comes in, for instance, and says, I'm going to be building 200 units here, and they're going to be rented for approximately $1,800, where does that qualify? Where does it fit?
I should have perhaps included another slide with that in this presentation. So this slide does show, in terms of the incomes, what those categories refer to. So the median income for a 4-person household is approximately $100,000. And so the income categories are portions of that. In terms of what that translates to in terms of rent or sales price, I don't have a perfect example for you, but HCD does have a sort of calculator that you can use to determine what a specific rent rate or sales price based on the number of bedrooms would be equivalent to, and they also have tables where it essentially breaks it down for each city. I can provide that information separately, but I don't have sort of exactly what a low-income rent rate would be off the top of my head.
If you can, it will be helpful, because I'd like to know who determines whether, for instance, there's a project going on right now at the corner of Ramon Road in Cathedral Canyon, just south of their condominiums now. Now, there's, I believe, 5 buildings. Now, how are those categorized? Are they categorized as low income, very low income, moderate? What are they, and who determines that? How is that determined? I would like to just have that knowledge.
Yeah, we can provide some resource on that. The state does have pretty specific methodologies on how it's calculated. I just unfortunately don't have the answer off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Council member, I can say that it's the developer that's going to choose what level they want to do in cooperation with the funding organizations. Sometimes that's the city. And one of the major components of having any successful affordable housing program is having free land to provide to the developers. Affordable housing projects are very expensive to develop, and usually they cannot pay for the cost of the land. They can't pay anything. So cities that have a reserve of land that is suitable for residential development, especially at high density, that can then provide that land for free, are very successful in developing affordable housing programs. That's not the only way to do it, but it is a major component of having a successful housing program.
Thank you.
All right, any additional? All right, next up is Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you. I just want to sort of reiterate what Mayor Pro Tem said in terms of what we can learn from best practices from other cities that are being successful, and if there are things we can replicate, we should certainly try and do that. The other question I had was, under the programs not started, is there a reason we're not doing them? And can we accelerate into doing them?
So some of these ones, they're sort of not directly implementable policies as they're written in the programs. And so something that we're looking to do both through the development code update, but as we consider the pro-housing designation as well, is to think about how can we take sort of a higher level program and make it something that we can concretely implement. And so I think that's part of what the barrier has been with these. So there's potentially nothing preventing us from making it something that we can implement.
If I can add on to Dom's comments here, I think one of the challenges we have is that there's not enough incentive for a developer to provide affordable housing. If we look at program 1.A.4, we can ask, but right now, no one's going to say yes. There's not a reason for them to do that. What incentives we have in our code are not sufficient to persuade a developer to reserve or restrict a portion of those units as affordable housing. We attempt. We raise the question in our pre-application meetings with developers, but most of the developers that come in, these are market rate developers, and they don't have an interest in restricting their product. So I think that is a challenge, and I think as we look at some of the tools that are in the toolbox, I think creating intentional incentives for the development of affordable housing. I think that is in program 1.A.9, creating the fee waivers, creating some greater incentives to encourage those affordable housing developers to come in the door, or for those market rate developers to look at providing some share of affordable housing. So I think this is a case where we need to look at the overall development process for housing and find clearer paths, stronger paths to support affordable housing.
And is there no way to, require 5% of whatever they're building
Yes.
to be?
We could, and some cities do have inclusionary zoning. We don't have an inclusionary housing requirement.
But we could.
There's enough vacant land that's not really, why would you pay the extra, I'm, as a developer thinking, why would you pay the extra when you can go and get that same piece of land
Sure.
without an extra fee?
Next.
Thanks so much. So I just have one question on this. You may know this, or maybe it's something you could get back to me on, is when you look at and it doesn't have to be all 9 cities, but the cities that are closest around us, who has the most land? How much land do they have that's available? So land that is either for sale or could potentially be for sale, not necessarily, or it could include the city's land as well, to kind of give us an idea of what is available out there and who we should be shaking hands with.
And are you referring to vacant land or city-owned land specifically?
I believe it would be vacant land.
Okay, yeah, we can look into that.
Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Lamb.
My question was, you talked about inclusionary incentives. So beyond free land, city-owned land, and modifying our fees, what would be third? What other incentive is there?
So some of the options would be, again, things with the development standards. So the city could provide more flexibility in things like setbacks or building height if affordable units were to be included, or parking standards, things like that.
I see, okay.
So another example
I just-
could be looking at our density bonus program. Right now, our density bonus program mirrors the state. We could go above and beyond that. And right now, we don't have a lot of projects that really elect to use density bonuses. But the density bonus program, that allows for a developer, if they're providing affordable housing, if they're going that route, they can get additional units. They can also seek waivers and other concessions from the city through the development process. We can look at how to modify that to make it more attractive by exceeding what the minimum state requirements are for the density bonus program.
Yeah, and the flip to that question was, if we've been talking to all these developers, why are they saying no?
I think we've said no.
Okay.
When it comes, and by this, I mean in terms of the availability of city-owned land or having funding for projects. So I think there's some challenges that we need to overcome, and part of this I think we can do through the development code update. This may be something we can pursue through a further study session on the pro-housing designation, the use of city-owned land, the use of city resources, how we can partner with affordable housing developers to get projects off the ground as we've seen in some other cities.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
I just have one quick question. Are ADUs counted as RENA numbers?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm just going to have a quick question.
All right, Councilmember.
Have we looked at city tax reduction for builders? If they come in with a large enough facility or something like that, then we might give them a 10% tax reduction for the first 2 years or something like that. Is that something we've even looked at?
No, but
Are you talking about a property tax reduction? I'm going to say the city doesn't get very much of that, so.
They don't get very much, but any reduction to a builder is favorable.
Well, I think what they've talked about are like fee deferrals or waivers, those types of things. That's probably more direct.
Whatever makes them happy. And have we considered or looked at that at all?
We haven't looked at that specifically. We can look at other financial mechanisms that, say, we have control over. Our community facilities district, that may be something that we can take a look at for projects. Perhaps that's something that we would grant a waiver for a qualifying affordable housing project or for a density bonus project.
And other incentives. I mean, I'm not suggesting that's the only incentive that's out there. I'm sure there are others that make a builder happy, and that might even be things we don't think are a huge deal, but it might be something that makes them happy.
Yes. So it's my suggestion that we use the development code update as an opportunity, because anything that's related to land use or zoning, we have a process underway now. And where it comes to permitting residential uses by right, creating that ministerial process where we have a project that meets objective design standards, we can put that in place through the development code update. And I think that may be an easy process. We have consultants, we have staff that are dedicated working on that. That's an avenue for us to look at the land use regulations, the zoning that's needed to support affordable housing. That's one track, and then simultaneous to that, I think we can come back in a study session and look at what other tools, what other policies, what other programs we should pursue. We're not going to touch fee waivers through the zoning code, through the development code update, but that is something that we can do simultaneously, such that when we bring the development code update to council for adoption in October, we can not only get your support for that, but we also have the other policies and programs in place that makes us competitive for the pro-housing designation and putting ourselves in a position where we're competitive for the pro-housing incentive program and other grants as well.
Sounds powerful.
But, Mr. City Manager, the Development Code Update is a living document that just in case something is not in there, if a developer comes to us and says, I want to build 200 units, and this amount are going to be for extremely low or low-income residents, and if they're asking for certain incentives or reduction in fees, we can look at that separately, and if there's any need for City Council to adopt that or to approve that, it will come to us. Is that correct?
So incentives and fees wouldn't be in the development code update. So a developer coming to the city asking for a fee waiver or a fee reduction, asking for something along those lines, that would be outside of the development code update. You are right that the zoning code, it is a living document. It is our intent to adopt a code that is responsive to the needs as we know them today, and to the extent that we can incorporate new policies affecting affordable housing. I think that would be a great position for us to be in. Density bonus, that'll be in there. The land uses by zoning district, the development standards, all of that will be in the zoning code. If for some reason a project comes along after we adopt the code that doesn't conform, that we want to support, of course, we can look at zoning code amendments in the future.
And as we're looking at other cities that are successful in achieving the higher number than we have, also looking at what are we doing differently that they're not doing? What are we doing that is preventing that?
Yes.
And so we can look at both. What are they doing right and what are we doing wrong?
Yes, I agree. And I think this is an opportunity for us in the sense that we have an excellent consulting team. We have a great staff that are dedicated to the development code update. And with support from council, we can continue to pursue policies that would put us in a stronger position for the production of affordable housing through the lens of the development code update, using those teams that are already at work.
Now, I have a question regarding property. Now, can we, for instance, a city owns land near and around the Salvation Army. Now, some of those lots that actually dead end at the property, for instance, I think it's Medallo and Vega, some of those streets. Now, can the city sell those properties and get money, and that particular money, can that be invested, for instance, in acreage, and the city can donate that towards affordable housing to a builder that will build affordable housing? Because if the city is able to sell those lots or that land that it owns, it can get more money because that is a very desirable area. It can get more money and purchase land to be donated or given to a developer somewhere, for instance, north of I-10 or around that area.
So I think the use of city-owned land is a deeper discussion and something we probably should schedule for another study session. I would say that the city does own land, including land adjacent to Veterans Village and Salvation Army. That site is in an attractive location in the sense that it is in a higher resource area that qualifies it for low-income housing tax credits. So that site itself is desirable for the development of affordable housing. Now, if the city were to elect to go through the disposition process, we'd have to follow the Surplus Land Act and as well the provisions under the Surplus Land Act. So we'd have to make that available to affordable housing developers before we could look at selling that on the open market. But if we were to go through the disposition process for any city-owned land, yes, if that were to clear the Surplus Land Act and the city were to sell that land, those funds would come back to the general fund, and the council would have discretion on how to use those funds.
Yeah,
One of the requirements under the Surplus Land Act, though, and Eric can correct me if I get this wrong, is that you do have to put a deed restriction on the property so that if those properties are sold or used in any way for development of housing, that they have to have certain affordability covenants placed on them for the number of units that would have to be developed that would meet those income requirements.
Any housing project that's going to count towards your low-income RENA numbers is going to have to be deed restricted, whether it's for sale or for rental.
For immemorial, I mean, forever?
Yes.
It is 45-year restriction, I believe, for rental housing and 30 years for sale housing? Or is it
45, 55, we're thinking somewhere.
45? Yeah, you're right, it is 55 for rental and slightly less for sale.
45.
yeah, my mentality is that if that's, for instance, 5 acres, there's your limited amount of units that you can build in 5 acres. But if you can sell that property and buy 20 acres, you can build a lot more units in those 20 acres than you do in those 5 acres. That's where,
You can build a lot of,
to talk that about in the future.
you can build a lot of units on 5 acres if you go up a lot of stories.
And I think the city manager is correct. It would probably be a much more lengthy discussion because you're also talking about 5 acres in a very buildable, high-resource area versus 20 acres where there is no infrastructure. So
Correct.
yeah. It's more complicated than just 5 acres to 20 acres.
I agree.
All right. Any other questions on the housing element program? No. Thank you so much, Dom, for your presentation. Are there any public comments?
Mayor, I did not receive any request to speak
All
forms.
right. Is there any member of the public present that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I return it back to the council. We're being asked to receive the progress report and authorize its transmittal. Is there a motion? A motion by Councilmember Ross? I'll second. Second by Councilmember Lamb.
Okay, you already announced it, so I'll go ahead and start that vote.
Sorry, didn't mean to do your job.
That's okay. Please
I
vote.
know you're busy.
And motion carries, all ayes.
All right. So that's the last item on our legislative calendar. The next item is discussion on future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items? No. I know we gave some direction to the city management a little earlier on legislative policy or that type of thing, so we'll see that. All right, and we have completed our closed session and it has been reported out by the city attorney, so we are ready for adjournment. We will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for your participation.
Okay, I have a couple questions.